There is a moment before almost every betrayal when the truth reveals itself. Not through a confession, not through an obvious warning, through something smaller. A compliment that feels slightly forced, a promise followed by hesitation, a friend who celebrates your failure more naturally than your success, a person who treats you warmly while you are useful, then changes the moment you are no longer needed. Most people notice these things only after the damage is done, but some recognize them immediately. They detect resentment behind praise, selfishness behind generosity, and control disguised as concern. They seem almost impossible to fool. So what do they understand that everyone else misses? They are not reading minds. They have simply learned to notice the patterns people cannot hide forever. Because the greatest advantage in dealing with human beings is not charm, confidence, power, or even intelligence. It is accurate perception. The ability to see what is actually happening while everyone else is distracted by what appears to be happening. And by the end of this video, you will know 10 patterns that can reveal what people may never tell you directly. Once you recognize them, conversations will sound different. Promises will carry less power, and people will become much easier to understand. Introduction. People reveal more than they realize. Most of us were taught to listen carefully to what people say. We were rarely taught to examine what happens after they say it. That difference matters. Words can be selected, rehearsed, and adjusted to produce a particular reaction. Someone can sound sincere for 5 minutes. They can perform kindness while expecting something in return. They can promise loyalty while privately preparing to leave. They can describe themselves as honest, disciplined, or trustworthy without living according to any of those qualities. But repeated behavior is far more difficult to control. Eventually, impatience escapes through the tone of a voice. Envy appears in a reaction that lasts only a second. Self-interest becomes visible when circumstances change. A contradiction emerges between the image someone protects and the decisions they repeatedly make. If you have ever looked back on a relationship and thought, the signs were there from the beginning, you already understand the cost of missing those details. So, before we continue, write this in the comments. Watch the pattern. That simple sentence contains the foundation of everything that follows. Centuries ago, Machiavelli examined human behavior without romanticizing it. He understood that people frequently present the version of themselves most likely to produce the result they want. They may use charm, status, vulnerability, confidence, or apparent generosity. But behind the presentation, there is usually an incentive, a fear, or a desire shaping their choices. Recognizing this does not require you to become cold. It does not mean assuming that every act of kindness is false or treating every relationship as a hidden battle. Suspicion without evidence creates paranoia. Trust without observation creates vulnerability. Wisdom exists between those extremes. The goal is to remain open without becoming blind. In the 10 lessons ahead, you will learn how to distinguish promises from patterns, examine hidden incentives, prevent emotion from corrupting judgment, detect small boundary tests, and use silence to understand more than constant questioning ever could. You will also discover what pressure reveals about character, how envy hides inside ordinary reactions, why approval-seeking makes people easier to control, and how a person's real priorities become visible through the things they consistently protect. The final lesson will connect everything by showing you how to transform observation from an occasional reaction into a permanent discipline. Because people are always communicating, even when their words say nothing important. Their timing communicates, their choices communicate, their inconsistencies communicate. The way they react when disappointed, challenged, ignored, or outperformed communicates. The evidence is usually present. The problem is that most people become emotionally attached to the explanation before they have studied the behavior. And that is exactly where the first lesson begins. Lesson 1. Believe patterns, not performances. The first mistake that makes people easy to deceive is giving trust to words before behavior has earned it. A convincing promise can create hope in seconds. A carefully delivered apology can make pain disappear temporarily. Praise can lower your defenses, and declarations of loyalty can make someone feel safe long before that loyalty has ever been tested. But words reveal what a person wants you to believe. Patterns reveal what they are prepared to live. Someone may repeatedly tell you that they respect you while ignoring every boundary you establish. Another person may claim to support your progress, but become distant whenever something good happens to you. Someone else may deliver a perfect apology after hurting you, only to repeat the same behavior once the immediate consequences disappear. If you judge only the performance, each moment can seem believable. You hear an explanation and decide to overlook the contradiction. You receive another promise and convince yourself that this time will be different. You remember the person's most beautiful words while dismissing the behavior that has already repeated itself several times. This happens because people rarely become attached to words alone. They become attached to the future those words allow them to imagine. The promise represents the relationship they want. The apology represents the change they hope to see. The compliment confirms the image they want to believe. Letting go of those words can feel like letting go of the future built around them. But reality cannot be evaluated through hope. A single generous act does not prove generosity. One emotional apology does not prove transformation. A dramatic expression of loyalty does not prove that someone will remain loyal when doing so becomes difficult. The real test is repetition. Watch what the person does when there is no audience to impress. Notice how they behave when keeping their word becomes inconvenient. Observe whether their kindness remains when there is no reward, whether their respect survives disagreement, and whether their loyalty continues when you have nothing useful to offer. That is where character becomes visible. A trustworthy person does not need to constantly advertise trustworthiness. Their consistency creates the evidence for them. They keep small promises as carefully as important ones. They respect boundaries, even when crossing them would benefit them. Their behavior remains recognizable across different environments because their character is not a costume designed for one situation. An unreliable person often produces the opposite pattern. Their explanations change according to what protects them. Their affection becomes strongest when they need access to you. Their principles disappear whenever those principles carry a personal cost. None of this means that one mistake should define someone permanently. People fail, misjudge situations, and sometimes behave below their own standards. The difference is what happens next. Do they accept responsibility without creating excuses? Do they make a visible correction? Does the behavior actually change, or does only the apology become more convincing? Never judge a person exclusively by their best moment or their worst one. Judge the direction created by their repeated choices. Performances are designed to influence an impression. Patterns emerge whether the person intends to reveal them or not. When words and behavior agree consistently, trust has a foundation. When they repeatedly contradict each other, believe the contradiction. You do not need another speech. You already have evidence. But observing what someone repeatedly does is only the beginning. To understand the behavior completely, you must look beneath it and ask a more revealing question. What does this person stand to gain? Lesson 2. Ask what the person stands to gain. Once you identify a behavioral pattern, the next step is to understand the incentive behind it. People do not always reveal what they want directly. Instead, they may approach through friendliness, praise, concern, vulnerability, or generosity. The behavior looks harmless on the surface, but underneath it may be driven by a desire for access, approval, attention, control, comfort, status, money, or influence. That does not automatically make the person malicious. Human beings naturally act according to incentives. The danger begins when someone hides that incentive because revealing it would make you less likely to cooperate. Consider the person who suddenly becomes unusually friendly just before asking for a favor. Their warmth may be genuine, but its timing reveals something important. Or consider someone who gives you advice that appears helpful, yet every possible outcome strengthens their position more than yours. Then there is the person who repeatedly presents themselves as helpless whenever you establish a boundary. Instead of respecting your decision, they describe their pain until your guilt becomes stronger than your judgment. They never demand control openly. They make you feel cruel for refusing to surrender it. This is why perceptive people look beyond the visible gesture. When someone offers help, they notice what obligation may follow. When someone delivers praise, they ask what resistance that praise might be lowering. When someone shares a warning, they consider whether the person is protecting them or quietly directing their choices. The most useful question is simple. What changes for this person if I agree? Then ask two more. Would they still behave this way if I had nothing to offer? And what happens to their attitude after they receive what they wanted? These questions reveal what appearances alone cannot. Someone driven only by immediate advantage often changes once the advantage disappears. Their interest fades after the favor is completed. Their kindness weakens when access is denied. Their respect turns into hostility when persuasion fails. What appeared to be affection may have been negotiation disguised as connection. Pay attention to how people treat those who cannot improve their status, solve their problems, or provide an opportunity. A person who is charming toward the powerful but dismissive toward everyone else is revealing the condition behind their charm. Timing also matters. Why did this person appear now? Why are they offering this particular solution? Why has their behavior changed precisely when you gained something they need? You do not need to accuse them. You do not even need to announce what you have noticed. Often the wisest response is to observe quietly and allow the pattern to continue revealing itself. This is not an invitation to search for corruption behind every generous act. Genuine kindness exists. Loyalty exists. People can help without secretly calculating a reward. But good intentions do not require you to abandon discernment. Paranoia decides that everyone is dangerous before evidence exists. Contextual intelligence waits, examines incentives, compares behavior, and forms conclusions carefully. The purpose is not to condemn people for wanting something. It is to recognize when their desire is being concealed so that your decisions can be manipulated. Yet even clear incentives can remain invisible when you are emotionally involved. You may understand exactly what someone gains and still ignore it because you love them, fear losing them, or desperately want their intentions to be pure. That is why the next lesson is essential. Never analyze people while emotion is analyzing for you. Lesson 3. Never analyze people while emotion is analyzing for you. Even when the evidence is visible, emotion can make you interpret it incorrectly. Strong feelings do not merely influence judgment. They decide which details you notice, which ones you excuse, and which version of reality you are willing to accept. Loneliness can make ordinary attention feel like genuine devotion. Attraction can turn inconsistency into mystery. Fear can make disrespect seem easier to tolerate than separation. Anger can transform an incomplete assumption into absolute certainty. Jealousy can make an innocent action appear suspicious, while desperation can make an obvious warning sign appear unimportant. The emotion may be real. That does not mean the conclusion it produces is reliable. This is why people often recognize the truth only after their feelings have changed. Once the attachment fades, they suddenly see contradictions that were present from the beginning. When the anger disappears, they realize they reacted to an interpretation rather than a fact. Distance restores the clarity that emotional intensity temporarily removed. Manipulative people understand this, whether consciously or instinctively. If someone knows that praise activates your ego, they can flatter you before making a request. If they know rejection activates your insecurity, they can withdraw affection until you surrender a boundary. If anger makes you impulsive, they can provoke you and then use your reaction against you. The strategy works because intense emotion creates urgency. It tells you to respond now, decide now, defend yourself now, or trust now. It leaves little room for examination. Perceptive people resist that urgency. They understand that temporary emotion should not be allowed to make permanent decisions. When the emotional pressure rises, they pause. They do not send the message immediately. They do not accept the promise instantly. They do not end the relationship, make the accusation, reveal the secret, or surrender the boundary while their judgment is unstable. Instead, they separate the situation into 3 parts. First, what actually happened? Describe the event without interpretation. What was said? What was done? What can be confirmed? Second, what did I feel? Name the anger, attraction, fear, embarrassment, loneliness, or excitement without pretending it is evidence. Third, what does the available information truly prove? This final question prevents feelings from filling the spaces where facts are missing. Suppose someone takes hours to answer a message. The event is the delayed response. The feeling may be rejection, but the conclusion that they no longer care is still an interpretation. More evidence is required. Now consider repeated lies. The event is no longer ambiguous. The person has contradicted verifiable facts several times. Affection may encourage you to excuse them, but emotion cannot erase the pattern. Emotional control does not mean becoming unfeeling. It means allowing feelings to speak without allowing them to deliver the final verdict. You can feel hurt without immediately seeking revenge. You can feel attracted without granting immediate trust. You can fear losing someone without abandoning the standards that protect you. The calmer you become, the less predictable, and therefore less controllable you are. Flattery loses its power. Provocation becomes easier to recognize. Silence no longer feels like an emergency that must be solved at any cost. Control the emotion, and you protect the accuracy of your perception. Once the emotional fog begins to clear, something important happens. Small details that once seemed harmless become visible again, and those small violations are often not accidents. They are tests. Lesson 4. Small violations are often tests. The most damaging relationships rarely become dangerous overnight. They deteriorate through small moments that appear too insignificant to confront. A joke that crosses the line, a lie about something minor, a boundary treated as negotiable, or a private detail shared after you asked for discretion. Individually, each violation may seem harmless. Together, they reveal a pattern of testing. Manipulation often begins this way because an obvious attack would create immediate resistance. A smaller violation produces uncertainty. You wonder whether you misunderstood. You tell yourself that confronting it would make you appear overly sensitive. You excuse the behavior to preserve peace. Meanwhile, the other person is learning something important: how much you will tolerate without consequence. The pattern usually follows a predictable sequence. First, they test a small boundary. Then they observe your reaction. If you remain silent, laugh uncomfortably, or accept a weak excuse, they repeat the behavior. Once repetition becomes normal, they intensify it. The disguised insult becomes open disrespect. The occasional lie becomes a system of deception. The request for flexibility becomes an expectation that your needs will always come second. This is how unacceptable behavior slowly becomes familiar. Imagine someone making jokes at your expense in front of others. When you object, they say you cannot take a joke. The subject is no longer their disrespect. It is supposedly your lack of humor. Or imagine a person who continues pressuring you after you have said no. They do not openly reject your boundary. Instead, they keep negotiating, creating guilt, or asking the same question in different ways until resistance becomes exhausting. Another person may repeatedly change small details in their stories. Each contradiction seems unimportant, but the pattern shows that truth is something they adjust whenever convenience requires it. To understand what you are seeing, ask 3 questions. Is this an isolated mistake, or does the same behavior keep returning? When I address it, does the person make a real correction? And are they sorry for what they did, or only uncomfortable because their actions now have consequences? A sincere person may make a mistake, but they do not need endless reminders to respect a clearly expressed limit. They listen, accept responsibility, and change the behavior. A manipulative person focuses on escaping accountability. They minimize the event, redirect blame, question your reaction, or produce an emotional apology without changing what caused the problem. This distinction matters because an apology is not proof of correction. Changed behavior is. You do not need to turn every uncomfortable moment into a confrontation. But you should not erase information simply because acknowledging it would create an inconvenient decision. Sometimes your mind detects danger before your emotions are ready to accept what it means. That quiet discomfort may be your perception connecting details that your attachment is still trying to excuse. Take it seriously. Observe what happens next. One small violation may be a mistake. Repeated violations after clear communication are a choice. The earlier you recognize that choice, the less time a destructive pattern has to establish itself. Major betrayals often seem sudden only because their smaller rehearsals were ignored. But noticing these rehearsals requires more than watching. It requires resisting the need to explain yourself, expose everything you know, or dominate the conversation. Sometimes the most revealing response is silence. Because when you stop filling every empty space, people often reveal far more than you could have forced them to say. Lesson 5. Let silence do the investigating. Silence is uncomfortable for many people because it removes the protection of constant noise. When a conversation becomes quiet, most people rush to fill the space. They add explanations that were never requested, reveal details they intended to keep private, or continue speaking until their true feelings escape through an unguarded sentence. That is why silence can reveal what direct questioning cannot. The person trying to impress everyone enters a conversation focused on performance. They want to prove their intelligence, success, innocence, or importance. While they are thinking about what to say next, they miss the information being offered in front of them. The observer enters differently. They listen for what is emphasized, avoided, repeated, and contradicted. They notice when the speaker's tone changes, when confidence becomes hesitation, and when a simple question produces an unnecessarily complicated answer. People reveal themselves constantly when they feel free to speak. Insecurity may appear through relentless bragging. Resentment may hide inside repeated sarcasm. Dishonesty may become visible when the same story changes each time it is told. Hidden competition may emerge when every achievement you mention is immediately answered with a larger achievement of their own. You will miss these details if you are fighting to control the conversation. This does not mean remaining silent to appear mysterious. Artificial silence can become another performance. The purpose is to create enough space for the other person's natural patterns to emerge. A simple strategy can change what you notice. Ask one clear question. Listen to the answer. Then wait. Do not immediately suggest the response you want to hear. Do not rescue the person from an uncomfortable pause. Do not reveal everything you already know. Allow them to decide what to say next. Inside that pause, people often volunteer the most valuable information. Watch their tone. Notice whether they answer directly or move around the subject. Pay attention to unnecessary details, sudden defensiveness, contradictions, and subjects they repeatedly bring back into the conversation. One strange pause does not prove deception. Nervousness can have many causes, and an honest person may struggle to express themselves. The purpose is not to treat every hesitation as guilt. It is to compare the moment with the larger pattern. Silence also protects you. When you speak impulsively, you may expose every plan, frustration, insecurity, and limit. You give others information they have not earned and create conflicts that restraint could have prevented. Not every thought requires an audience. Not every accusation should be announced before the evidence is complete. Not every plan benefits from being shared before it is secure. The less desperate you are to explain yourself, the more clearly you can observe everyone else. Confident people can tolerate moments in which attention is not centered on them. They do not need to dominate every exchange or prove their value through endless speech. Their restraint allows them to gather information while others are still performing. Speaking gives information away. Listening allows information to arrive, and over time, the person who listens carefully becomes harder to mislead because they are no longer reacting only to sentences. They are studying the pauses, inconsistencies, emotions, and patterns surrounding those sentences. Conversation can reveal a great deal about someone, but there is an even more accurate test, one that strips away preparation and makes maintaining a false image much harder. Watch what happens when pressure enters the room, because comfort allows people to manage their appearance. Pressure reveals the person underneath it. Lesson 6. Pressure reveals the default person. Comfort gives people time to manage how they appear. When circumstances are easy, almost anyone can seem patient, generous, loyal, and emotionally controlled. Nothing is demanding a sacrifice from them. Their reputation and their self-interest can move in the same direction. Pressure changes that. Stress consumes the energy required to maintain a carefully constructed image. Reactions become faster, filters become weaker, and the person's emotional defaults begin to surface. That is why you should observe how someone responds to delays, rejection, failure, embarrassment, disagreement, uncertainty, and loss of control. A person may appear respectful until someone refuses their request. They may appear loyal until loyalty becomes inconvenient. They may speak confidently about responsibility until a serious mistake threatens their reputation. Then the performance becomes harder to sustain. Some people respond by blaming everyone around them. Others panic and abandon principles they claimed were unbreakable. Some become cruel toward the nearest available target, while others lie because protecting their image matters more than correcting the problem. But pressure can also reveal strength. A disciplined person may feel angry without becoming destructive. They can experience fear without betraying others to protect themselves. When something goes wrong, they focus on responsibility rather than blame. When everyone else becomes unstable, they remain capable of thinking, listening, and protecting the people around them. The difference is not that strong people feel less pressure. It is that pressure does not immediately take control of their values. Watch what someone does after losing control of a situation. Can they accept that events will not obey them? Do they adapt, or do they punish everyone nearby? Can they hear disagreement without treating it as humiliation? Can they fail without rewriting the story to preserve their ego? These moments reveal more than months of comfortable conversation. One of the clearest tests is to observe how a person treats those who cannot solve their problem. A frustrated customer may speak politely to the manager while humiliating an employee with no authority. A stressed professional may remain respectful toward a superior, but become aggressive with someone beneath them. The change proves that the behavior is not uncontrollable. It is selectively directed toward the person least able to respond. Pressure does not always create these qualities. Often it exposes what was already present but carefully restrained. This lesson also applies to you. Your reactions under stress reveal the emotional habits you have built in private. Do you become reckless when embarrassed? Do you attack when corrected? Do you sacrifice principles the moment keeping them carries a cost? If so, pressure has not made you a different person. It has shown you what still needs discipline. The perceptive individual uses difficult situations twice. First, to understand the people involved, and then to understand themselves. Instead of being consumed entirely by the crisis, they ask, "What is this moment revealing?" Comfort displays personality. Pressure exposes structure. But there is one form of pressure that does not come from failure, fear, or loss. It appears when something good happens, not to the person you are observing, but to you. Your progress can create a comparison they never expected to face, and their reaction may expose one of the most carefully hidden emotions in human behavior. Watch what happens when you begin to rise. Lesson 7. Watch what happens when you begin to rise. Failure reveals who is willing to stand beside you when life becomes difficult. Success reveals who can remain beside you when your growth makes them uncomfortable. Envy is rarely announced honestly. Most people will never say, "Your progress makes me feel inferior." That emotion is too exposing. Instead, it disguises itself as humor, concern, indifference, criticism, or competition. This is why someone can smile while congratulating you and still resent what your achievement represents. Your success may force them to compare their discipline with yours, their choices with yours, or their unrealized potential with what you have built. The problem is not necessarily what you did to them. Your progress has become a mirror they do not want to face. Watch the small reactions. You share good news, and they immediately minimize its importance. You mention an achievement, and they turn it into a joke at your expense. You explain a new goal, and instead of asking how they can support you, they produce a list of reasons you will probably fail. Sometimes the reaction is colder. They were available whenever you had a problem, but become distant when your life begins improving. They could comfort you when you were struggling because your struggle did not threaten their self-image. Your victory changes the balance. Another sign is unnecessary competition. You share something meaningful, and they immediately respond with something larger. They cannot allow your moment to exist without redirecting attention toward themselves. What appears to be ordinary conversation becomes a quiet contest you never agreed to enter. But not every warning about your decisions is envy. A sincere person may challenge you because they see a genuine risk. The difference appears in their intention and consistency. Honest concern is specific, respectful, and still leaves room for your growth. Envy repeatedly reduces your confidence, diminishes your progress, and seems strangely relieved whenever you experience a setback. Pay attention to the pattern. Are they present during your problems but absent during your victories? Do they redirect the conversation whenever attention moves toward your success? Do they repeatedly plant doubt around opportunities that could move you beyond your current position? A person who cares about you does not need to understand every ambition to celebrate your progress. They may offer caution, but they do not secretly require you to remain small so that they can remain comfortable. Recognizing envy does not give you permission to become arrogant. Your success does not make every critic jealous, and it does not make you superior to those moving at a different pace. Stay humble, but do not become blind. You do not need to confront every subtle reaction or accuse people of feelings they have not admitted. Reduce what you share, observe how they respond over time, and protect important plans from those who repeatedly treat your growth as a threat. Success changes social dynamics. Some people see your progress and feel inspired, others see it and feel exposed. Their reactions will show you the difference. Yet envy gains its greatest influence when you need the envious person's approval. If being liked matters more than seeing clearly, you may shrink your ambitions, hide your victories, or tolerate disrespect to keep the relationship comfortable. That gives someone else control over the direction of your life. To remove that control, you must remove the lever they are using, and one of the strongest levers in human behavior is the need for approval. Lesson 8. Remove the lever of approval. The need to be liked becomes dangerous when it begins deciding what you will tolerate. Once someone realizes that rejection frightens you, they gain leverage. They do not need to command you directly. They can withdraw affection, threaten exclusion, express disappointment, or make acceptance feel conditional until you change your behavior to recover their approval. This is how people abandon their own judgment without realizing they are being controlled. They remain silent when someone crosses a boundary because speaking may create conflict. They agree with opinions they do not believe because disagreement may make them unpopular. They tolerate disrespect, hide their ambitions, and betray their own standards to preserve relationships that depend on their obedience. Each compromise appears small, but over time, the person begins living according to other people's reactions. Approval-seeking weakens perception because it changes the question in your mind. Instead of asking, "Is this right?" you begin asking, "Will they still like me if I do it?" That question makes truth negotiable. You may already recognize the manipulation. You may see the pattern clearly and understand that the relationship is unhealthy. But if losing acceptance feels more painful than losing self-respect, you will continue pretending not to see it. Machiavelli understood that control is easiest when it can be exercised through an existing fear. The manipulator does not create your need for approval. They simply discover it and use it. The solution is not to become hostile or indifferent to everyone. Human connection matters. Respectful feedback can correct blind spots, and healthy relationships require consideration. The danger is making external acceptance the foundation of your identity. There is an important difference between being liked and being respected. Being liked often requires you to remain agreeable, predictable, and comfortable for others. Respect is more likely to come from consistency, honesty, discipline, and clear standards. Those qualities will not please everyone. A boundary disappoints the person who benefited from its absence. A truthful answer frustrates the person who expected your silence. A firm no feels offensive to someone accustomed to wearing down your resistance. Their disappointment does not automatically mean you have done something wrong. Before changing a decision to recover someone's approval, ask yourself, am I responding to evidence, principle, and long-term peace, or merely escaping the discomfort of being disliked? That question restores independence. You must accept that no version of you will receive universal approval. If you become more generous, someone may call you weak. If you become more assertive, someone may call you selfish. If you succeed, some will say you changed. If you remain where you are, others will criticize your lack of ambition. Trying to satisfy every judgment leaves you without a direction of your own. Quiet confidence is the ability to hear disapproval without automatically obeying it. It is saying no without writing a speech to justify your existence. It is remaining honest even when honesty removes you from a room built on pretense. When approval stops being your emotional oxygen, manipulative people lose one of their strongest tools. They may still criticize, withdraw, or pressure you, but their reaction no longer determines your choices. You become free to evaluate people as they are, rather than as you need them to see you. And once that need becomes quieter, another truth becomes easier to recognize. People constantly reveal what matters most to them, not through what they claim to value, but through where they repeatedly place their time, attention, effort, and sacrifice. To understand someone's real priorities, follow the investment. Lesson 9. If you want to know what someone truly values, do not begin with what they say matters. Look at what repeatedly receives their time, attention, effort, risk, and sacrifice. Priorities are revealed through allocation. A person may claim that family is the center of their life, yet consistently give everyone else the time and patience their family never receives. Someone may speak passionately about honesty, but hide the truth whenever honesty threatens their comfort. Another person may insist they support your growth, then disappear whenever that support requires effort, encouragement, or sacrifice. Their words describe an identity. Their investments reveal the hierarchy beneath it. This does not mean that every neglected responsibility proves a lack of care. Life becomes demanding. People experience exhaustion, financial pressure, illness, and seasons in which their available energy is limited. The question is not whether someone always distributes everything perfectly. The question is what repeatedly wins when a choice must be made. When people say they have no time, observe where their time still appears. When they claim something is important, notice what they are willing to inconvenience themselves to protect. When they describe a principle as sacred, watch whether it survives the moment keeping it becomes costly. Investment is difficult to fake consistently. Anyone can create one dramatic gesture. They can make a public declaration, purchase an impressive gift, or appear during a moment when everyone is watching. But genuine priority becomes visible in ordinary decisions. Who remembers the promise after the emotional conversation has ended? Who checks on you without receiving recognition? Who remains dependable when helping you is inconvenient? Who continues working toward a goal after the excitement disappears? These quiet choices reveal more than any performance. The same principle can expose misplaced priorities. A person who repeatedly chooses comfort over responsibility is showing what governs them. Someone who abandons every principle under social pressure is revealing that acceptance ranks above integrity. A person who always finds energy for pleasure but never for commitment has already communicated the truth. You may not like the message, but the investment is clear. Apply this lesson to yourself as honestly as you apply it to others. Your calendar, habits, attention, and repeated sacrifices tell a more accurate story than your intentions. You may say that health matters while consistently damaging your body. You may claim that growth is a priority while avoiding every uncomfortable step it requires. You may insist that a relationship matters while giving it only whatever energy remains after everything else. This is not an invitation to condemn yourself. It is an opportunity to stop building identity around intentions that your actions do not support. Ask, if someone could see only my repeated choices, what would they conclude that I value? That answer may be uncomfortable, but discomfort can become direction. Once the contradiction is visible, you can begin investing according to the priorities you claim to hold. With other people, resist judging by isolated moments. One forgotten promise does not define a relationship, just as one generous act does not prove lifelong loyalty. Follow the pattern of investment across time. People make room for what they truly protect. They accept costs for what they deeply value. They return their attention to whatever occupies the highest position within them. Follow the investment, and priorities stop being mysterious. But to follow anything across time, you need more than intelligence or intuition. You need the patience to notice, remember, compare, and resist premature conclusions. Every lesson so far depends on that discipline. The final step is learning how to turn awareness into a daily practice. Lesson 10. Turn awareness into a daily practice. Most people move through conversations collecting impressions rather than evidence. They notice what is obvious, react to what is immediate, and forget the smaller details before those details can form a pattern. They look, but they do not register. They hear, but they rarely compare what was said today with what was said a month ago. Awareness works differently. It is not a mysterious talent possessed by a fortunate few. It is a habit developed through deliberate attention. The more carefully you observe, remember, and compare, the more naturally patterns begin to reveal themselves. Start by noticing changes. Listen for a shift in tone when a particular subject appears. Observe a pause before an answer that is normally delivered with confidence. Notice repeated phrases, unexpected defensiveness, and the difference between how someone behaves privately and how they behave before an audience. Watch body language, but never treat one gesture as absolute proof. Crossed arms can indicate discomfort, or the person may simply be cold. A delayed response can suggest hesitation, or they may be choosing their words carefully. One moment is a clue. Repetition creates evidence. Pay attention to how the same person changes across environments. Are they respectful only around people with status? Does their confidence become cruelty when they enter a position of authority? Do they speak differently when the person being discussed leaves the room? Also, observe reactions to particular people. A sudden change in energy, posture, warmth, or attention can reveal admiration, fear, competition, resentment, or dependence before any of those emotions are admitted openly. But observation becomes dangerous when it is mixed with premature certainty. If you decide too quickly that you already understand everything, you stop gathering information. You begin forcing each new detail to support the conclusion you formed too early. Use a more disciplined system. First, notice without immediately judging. Second, remember what repeats. Third, compare the person's words with their behavior. Finally, wait long enough for the pattern to become clear. This patience separates awareness from suspicion. Suspicion searches for proof of what it already believes. Awareness remains open to several explanations until consistent evidence removes the uncertainty. You can practice this anywhere. During conversations, resist planning your next response while the other person is still speaking. After an important interaction, recall what changed when certain subjects appeared. When a promise is made, remember it and observe whether action follows without repeated reminders. You should also turn this attention inward. Notice what triggers your defensiveness. Observe which people make you abandon your standards. Pay attention to the stories you repeatedly tell yourself to excuse behavior you know must change. Self-awareness protects you from becoming the very person you have learned to recognize. As your perception improves, so do your decisions. You grant trust more carefully. You establish boundaries earlier. You stop confusing charm with character and isolated gestures with permanent qualities. Relationships become easier to evaluate because you are working with accumulated evidence rather than emotional guesswork. Life will not become perfectly predictable. People are complex, circumstances change, and even careful observers can misjudge a situation. The purpose is not perfect certainty. It is greater accuracy. The person who sees more clearly becomes harder to confuse, pressure, and control, not because they know every secret, but because they no longer ignore the evidence unfolding in front of them. And now the 10 lessons form a complete picture. They are not separate tricks for exposing other people. Together, they create a deeper transformation from reacting to appearances to perceiving reality with patience, discipline, and clarity. Taken together, these lessons change more than how you evaluate other people. They change how you move through the world. You stop reacting to isolated moments and begin connecting evidence across time. You stop allowing a convincing explanation to erase a repeated pattern. You become slower to accuse, but also slower to excuse what has become undeniable. That is the difference between suspicion and perception. Suspicion reacts before it understands. Perception observes until the truth has enough evidence to stand on its own. Intelligence alone cannot protect you from deception. Highly intelligent people are still manipulated when loneliness controls their judgment, when praise controls their ego, or when the need for approval makes them afraid to acknowledge what they already see. Disciplined attention is what creates protection. Return to the situations from the beginning. The compliment hiding resentment no longer appears harmless when the same person repeatedly diminishes every success that belongs to you. The kindness hiding self-interest becomes visible when warmth disappears immediately after access is denied. The promise of loyalty loses its power when pressure arrives and the person consistently chooses convenience over commitment. You are no longer guessing what exists inside them. You are responding to what their choices have made visible. This transformation happens gradually. You begin trusting less impulsively, not because everyone is dishonest, but because trust deserves evidence. You observe more patiently, not because every detail proves something, but because repeated details eventually form a pattern. You react less emotionally, not because feelings are weaknesses, but because they should not deliver conclusions before facts have been examined. You judge more accurately, not by reducing people to one mistake, but by recognizing the direction of their repeated behavior. And you choose relationships more wisely, not according to charm, intensity, or promises, but according to consistency, responsibility, and mutual respect. This is not about becoming impossible to reach. It is about becoming difficult to mislead. You can remain generous without giving everyone unlimited access. You can forgive someone without pretending they are safe. You can understand another person's pain without allowing that pain to become permission for repeated harm. Clarity gives you those distinctions. The deepest change occurs when you no longer require reality to match your hopes. You stop protecting an illusion merely because accepting the truth would hurt. You stop falling in love with potential while living with a pattern that never changes. You allow people to be revealed by their choices, and you give yourself permission to respond to who they consistently are, not only to who they once promised to become. There are two dangerous extremes. One is believing everyone immediately. The other is believing no one at all. The first leaves you vulnerable. The second leaves you isolated. Wisdom exists between them. It allows trust to grow without forcing it to appear overnight. It keeps your heart open while requiring behavior to support what words have claimed. Listen carefully, but watch consistently. Accept explanations, but compare them with what follows. Give people room to make mistakes, but notice whether correction actually occurs. Trust slowly enough for character to become visible, and when repeated evidence speaks clearly, do not silence it simply because the truth is inconvenient. At the beginning, we asked whether perceptive people were born with an unusual ability to read others. Most were not. They learned to pause when everyone else rushed. They remembered what everyone else dismissed. They stopped treating every word as proof and every feeling as fact. Over time, attention became instinct. You can develop the same discipline. You do not need to know every secret people hide. You only need to notice the patterns they cannot stop repeating. And when you do, something changes inside you. You speak with greater intention because you no longer need to dominate every conversation. You establish boundaries earlier because you recognize small tests before they become large violations. You become calmer under pressure because you understand that every reaction is revealing something, including your own. You do not become colder. You become clearer. And clarity allows you to offer trust where it is earned, distance where it is necessary, forgiveness where it brings freedom, and loyalty where loyalty is returned. That is the real art of understanding people, not controlling them, exposing them, or assuming the worst about them, but seeing reality clearly enough to make wise decisions without hatred, fear, or illusion. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these 10 lessons made you recognize a pattern you had previously overlooked? Write the lesson number in the comments and explain what changed in the way you see it. Your experience may help someone else recognize the same pattern before it costs them years of confusion. If you know someone who trusts too quickly, ignores repeated warning signs, or struggles to separate words from behavior, share this video with them and subscribe for more lessons on psychology, strategy, self-mastery, and human behavior. Keep your heart open, but keep your eyes open too.